To my extreme right is Neil Aronson. He's head of strategic sourcing and logistics with Blue Cross of California. I have
Uber. That's loud.
I know you guys are triplets, right? Your brother is with Uber. So we have Tony Menezes. He's a global leader for business process operations with IBM. And we have Sam Barani. He's global business services officer with Fresenius Healthcare, right? So throughout this conference, we're going to talk about how the convergence of technology, geopolitical forces, economic turmoil, and other factors are impacting the business cycles. Conventionally, we've had cost-cutting cycles followed by growth and innovation cycles. But due to this new reality that we are living in, these cycles are shrinking, where we're almost like continuously in this balance between cutting costs while driving innovation. So we'll talk about the ability to change our business and operating model in these rapidly shifting business cycles. So I'll start with Neil first, and then you can go next, Tony. What is your perspective on the rapid fluctuations in business cycles, and how is impacting your business and operating model?
Yeah, so at Uber, we've had a pretty significant challenge the last couple of years with regard to COVID and just economic downturn like we spoke about previously. I think change is hard. You've got to manage through change. The thing that we did well is when you think about how quickly technology is changing and companies need to pivot, I think it's critical to have the structure to be able to move quickly. So you got to start with the right team, hire the right resources, make sure you're structured appropriately, have the right framework within your operating model to be able to adapt to change. So at Uber, we've done a good job around moving from a decentralized function to centralized so you could make change quicker and move fast. So really we spend a lot of time reprioritizing some of our key goals and moving quick. We also, you don't want to be a one-trick pony. I mean, there are certain companies that, that's their bread and butter, and that's all you're ever going to be. But in our case, when the pandemic hit, our rides dropped to 90%, but luckily we had Uber Eats, which now it's 50-50 in a post-COVID world. So I think you need to diversify as a company, whether it's product or service, and make sure that it's you can scale long-term into the future.
Yeah, thanks.
Tony?
Yeah, so from an IBM point of view, so just to put into perspective, IBM has the advantage or the luxury of having itself being a technology powerhouse in terms of all the research and development we do that we drive into our software and technology products. And on the services side, we do everything from consulting to implement and operate. I think we're in a unique situation, as Frank talked about in the previous presentation as well, of being able to now meet our clients, where they are, and to actually now bring comprehensive capabilities to them. So when I work with my clients, even if they're on the business operations side, it's an opportunity to actually figure out how we can not only deliver value for them for the work that we do, but they're expecting us to actually drive innovation and transformation on what's retained in their side of the house. They're really expecting IBM to now provide an end-to-end set of capabilities and actually drive transformation and change. Experience is a big factor in how we actually expect it to deliver value. Clients are looking for their stakeholders to actually have a different way of engaging with their shared service or their IT providers, and that's a big part of the changes that are happening in the industry for us today.
Sam, what's your take?
So for us, kind of maybe step back for a second. So Fresenius as a group, we are a medtech, pharmaceutical, healthcare, nutritious, wellness company. So we are sort of a conglomerate. And for us, maybe not to repeat, two things I would add. One, we used to have quarterly business reviews with our CEO, my boss, that we would go through the changes of the business and how we operate. Now we have the same level of depth monthly and live via technology that we use that you can very interactively go deep into the business. So you have a very close finger on the way that the business is running at a very higher frequency with the CEO of the company. The second is also connection to the employees as well as external benchmarks and partners outside. so that we are constantly monitoring what's happening around us as well as with our workforce, so that we can always triangle into, okay, what do we need to change? How do we need to behave? And that, I think, the frequency and the watch that we have towards the dynamic nature of the market is changed significantly for us.
Yeah. So Sam, as you mentioned, you run a truly global and diversified business. Fresenius is like a $20 billion company that very few would have heard of, but you're a German headquartered firm. And you face a lot of unique challenges operating in, I think, 150 plus countries, and a lot of lessons learned in terms of how to operate in these rapidly shrinking business cycles. So talk to us a little bit about what are some of the challenges you face and lessons learned?
Sure. So as a group, we are in 155 countries, about 40 billion and 320,000 employees. The way that we used to operate was, and we are in the business of kidney, so anything relates to kidney. It used to be every country out of 155 had a CEO and a CFO, and they were told, you can do whatever you do as long as you're number one in the market. And that's pretty much what they did. And we became the largest provider in the world with the biggest market share. However, as you can imagine, with the economy change, the world changes, and COVID hits, that model doesn't work anymore. So we had to actually fundamentally change how we operate as a business. And what we did is we basically changed our business to what we call a three-pillar model. So about 10 to 15% of the business, country organizations across the globe, about 10 to 15% are corporate functions, and everything else we centralize in the services business, which is my team. I'm also the CTO for the company, so we also have the transformation team. So what we did is we said, let's combine strategy and transformation as well as a significant amount of operations and delivery, front end and back end of the business in one group. And we started seeing significant changes by setting the strategy, as I said, very closely monitoring what's happening in the market, as well as the internal and external dynamics, as well as very quickly reflecting that into the way we operate. So that was a huge change for us, I would say. Second is we started to literally transform everything from our processes, the technology that we have, organization that, the way that we are set up, and that helped us, and we are in the process, by the way, we are not done with that journey. That massive transformation across every function, back office and front office, product portfolio, go-to-market strategy, what do we do in a hospital versus the machines that we make. That journey basically helped us really get ahead of the game and not be reactive and do proactive kind of measurements. And I would say, usually you say the simplest, people, process, technology. We had to really pivot across all of them to make sure that we are managing the risk and getting ahead of it, which in the past maybe it was one-off and in each category.
So Neil, Uber, of course, started as a breakthrough digital disruptor and now has grown into a global, very large organization, right? What are some of the attributes that allowed Uber to succeed and thrive despite a myriad challenges, competition, as well as the pandemic, which many thought would kill the business model?
Yeah. So I've been there for almost 7 years now, and it's been quite a ride, no pun intended. I've seen a lot. I'm trying to think where to start with this. So when I first joined, there were a few thousand employees. It was completely decentralized. It was growth at all costs on the ride side of the business. They had a concept back there called Big Bold Bets, and we were Uber of everything, everywhere. We were doing cars, drones, delivery. We started to get into scooters and bikes, and it was too much. And then, right before COVID and even during COVID, we started divesting and selling off some of the businesses that really weren't going to be core to us. And so we kept Freight, Uber Eats, which now has grocery and alcohol delivery, and our rides, but we matured over time. Junior in the existence of Uber, the whole delete Uber, the branding was pretty bad. We had a lot of issues with leadership. And then when they brought in Dara, an amazing leader, amazing CEO, employees really embraced that culture change, and I felt it too over the last 4 or 5 years with Dara at the helm. You see the top-down approach, and we're targeted more, and we've reduced the number of verticals that we want to play in, and we're focusing more on the core parts of Uber, so eats, delivery, grocery, freight, so to speak. And so I think with the pandemic, and I mentioned diversification earlier, luckily we had Uber Eats in the back pocket, we had freight already pre-COVID, and that saved our business. I mean, you've seen Lyft, and you've seen some of our competition globally, where they're one-trick ponies, they're not doing well. They had to invest a lot of capital, and now you can't get capital, and so all their businesses are suffering. And now if you look at Uber, it's almost 50-50 revenue, gross-wise, for Eats, delivery, as well as the rides. So it was a fantastic shift for us. We've also, we have
Now, when you entered more into the Uber Eats side, was that a preemptive move before? But it worked out well during the pandemic because everyone was ordering in.
Yeah, it was perfect. So Uber Eats was started in around 2016, so it's been around for quite a while. The growth, though, during COVID was astronomical because people obviously weren't going out. It really helped our business. And I thought the post-pandemic world, things would go back and we'd either reduce or flatten out, and Eats continues to grow. So consumer behavior has been hard to change, which is a good thing for us. But yeah, it's a whole new world. The culture's different. I feel like in a lot of other tech companies, unfortunately, have overhired during COVID. We grew by about 4% in total headcount versus the Googles, the Facebooks, the Salesforce of the world. And we're now starting to see that in other tech companies where they're having to lay off big parts of their company to right size and make sure that they're doing their fiduciary responsibility for the company long term. But we have not had to do that, knock on wood. So we're in a good position going into 2023 and beyond.
So Tony, I mean, IBM, of course, has been around for 111 plus years, gone through countless business cycles, seen the ups and downs along with your clients. So how is the post-pandemic age impacting the way your clients operate their business and rely on external partners such as IBM?
Yeah, so our clients today, like many of you in the room, are all dealing with how do they prioritize their investments, at the same time continue to drive massive amount of digitization across back and front offices. And that challenge is actually a big part of the debate that we're in the middle of in our discussions with our clients. The other thing that we're starting to see with our customers, and even IBM as a provider to internally, is how do you ensure that you have a very quick return on your investments to be able to then turn that around and drive ongoing and sustainable progress in what you're trying to do. So when we talk to clients, they're asking for ROIs within a year. ROIs that go out over 3 years are less interested and don't necessarily get a lot of attention. And so they're really looking for how do they really act with speed and be able to drive those innovations to quick returns that can be reinvested in their business. The third thing that we're starting to see with customers is how do they actually shift the way they engage? I talked about experiences being a big factor, not only to what they provide their internal business units, but also their employees, their suppliers, their distributors, and eventually, of course, their customers. And so as they're trying to deal with all of these dynamics, the squeeze play is on inside of the organizations to be able to do all of that. As a service provider to this industry, again, bringing the technology side and the operation sides together, we have a unique ability to be able to help clients in addressing some of those things. We also have to step up to some challenges that are kind of out there in the industry. Clients are looking for us to drive the value, but this is also going to require us to really cannibalize the way we operate today. As a service provider, we have to start to get uncomfortable with the way we are existing in our current operating models and actually step up and give them the innovation that they're expecting off of us. We have to be able to bring not only what we can do within the IBM Corporation, but also with a large ecosystem, because clients are looking for us to integrate that value proposition. We've started to see some of the advisory and strategic consultants tell clients that as customers look at buying services horizontally, whether it's the IT infrastructure, your cloud infrastructure, your application services, your data or AI and automation solutions, and eventually to your business operations, as you buy those things horizontally, the client becomes the integrator of those services for themselves. There's plenty of opportunities for interdependencies of all of those providers to be able to kind of bounce off of each other and miss the outcomes that clients would expect. We're now starting to see clients expect us as a service provider to integrate those propositions for them. And so this is actually a great opportunity for what an IBM company can do for our clients. And so when we do so, not only are they expecting us to mitigate the risk of integrating all of those capabilities, but also step up and deliver outcomes to them. So this is going to be a fundamental shift that we are trying to capture and move forward on as we see the evolution of what customers are expecting in the current economic and business cycles, and what we can do with enabling technology within all services that we deliver to our clients.
So really moving towards more being a business partner as opposed to just a service provider.
Correct. No, very much so. In fact, clients are challenging us to not just stay in our lanes of what we're contracted to, but to really help them identify what they can do on what we can see. We actually are now starting to leverage data a lot more in being able to identify where clients are having challenges, bringing ideas forward to them on how they can reimagine the way work gets done. Clients are no longer expecting us to stay behind the service levels or the operating KPIs that we have, but to really challenge us on driving innovation. We're starting to see commercial models that will evolve towards innovation being a key change factor in the way we're actually valued by our clients.
Right, which brings me to the next question, which is around the change in the commercial models, right? As clients expecting sort of cost savings on one hand, innovation on the other hand, almost simultaneously. How are commercial models evolving from your perspective as a service provider, and then Neil and Sam can talk about it from the client side?
This is the holy grail that, as service providers, as clients, because you as advisors have been trying to get us all to come together. I think this is going to have the opportune time to actually step up. We are still married to our past, let's be honest. That's, if you look at all of our contracts and the way our commercial models are, we're very much resource-centric, whether it's an IT set of metrics or an FTE-based set of metrics, and that's the way clients and us are transacting. We have to step up as a service provider to be able to help clients transform towards outcomes. When we have the luxury of working with clients for a long period of time, we're able to actually truly understand their business and then take it to adjacent clients in the same industry. I think customers are going to expect service providers like IBM and others here to be able to actually deliver on outcomes, take the risk, and then basically get your remuneration. That's going to be the big change of what's going to happen here. We are now going to start to see us leverage our incumbency to work with our existing clients to bring those value propositions together. We're also separating the way we engage with customers. We're very much focused on delivering on what we're contracted for, whether it's on the IT side, the application side, the business side, or all three of them combined. Those operational efficiencies are expected by our clients. When we sign our long-term agreements with them, we're committed to be able to deliver those to you. In parallel, we're also working with bringing the rest of our IBM organizations together, the consulting side, the advisory side, and the technology side, to really look at the work that we do with them, the adjacent work that's around what we don't necessarily do, and to actually drive change over there. And that incumbency is an important part of how we believe we're going to actually move this forward. So we are at that stage where we think we're going to be able to make inroads into really transforming from the current commercial models, be prepared to cannibalize our business, and shift into the new ways of working with clients.
Okay. Neil?
I agree. I think we are married somewhat to the past. However, I am seeing more and more shift to outcome-based type contracts, deliverables-based versus the traditional T&M for the BPO or call center support, things like that. But I think you mentioned partner previously too. I think we're also looking at, and I'm seeing more customers lean on their suppliers/partners to come in. Like we're in it day to day, and we see what we see, but that outside lens, our suppliers actually see and know more. They have experience from many customers versus us just being in this one ecosystem. And yes, we all have experience as leaders and teams. End of the day, we've leaned heavily on our suppliers and partners to come in and do a full assessment and tell us where they can drive change with either the commercial agreement or the deliverables. I'll give you an example. At Uber, we use Accenture as our BPO partner, and then we have an intelligent automation group also through Accenture. And traditionally, those two didn't talk, but now, having both different groups supporting Uber, they can talk and come to us with ideas to minimize costs, reduce costs, give us productivity into the future. And so we're seeing more and more shift, leveraging our partners and supply base to help tell us where we're falling short, how we can restructure things to benefit both partners long term.
Yeah, and I think from my end, I think it all comes back to the partnership at the end of the day. So, there are two types of partners you have. One, that you call them and you say, hey, this is the trouble I have, I need your help, and they refer you to the contract, so you never call them again. And there's a second one that you feel like they're in it with you to help you, overcome the obstacle, whatever that is. So I think we've seen the most successful partners for us are the ones that if they're advising, they're coming in, they're finding opportunities, and they're trying to actually end that relationship as soon as possible because they want to pass that knowledge to you so that you can carry it on. So they're not there to just hang around and advise forever. And guess what? Again, we want to bring them back in. Or they are there to provide efficiencies, find opportunities that we can have gain sharing together. And I think that's just the type of attitude that is, we talk a lot about it, but I don't see that as often in the industry from some of the partners. So when we see it, we stick with those partners and we grow our business. And when you look at our run rate over year, it usually goes up because they take away all the share from everybody else who doesn't have that attitude.
Yeah, okay.
But I was going to say, to add to both what Sam and Neil just said, right? As we also work with our clients, there needs to be a level of maturity on both sides. We've got to have a level of high-level sponsorship on both sides. Because, at the end of the day, when clients engage with IBM, they want us to bring all of what we can bring to that given engagement with that customer. And so that's one part of this governance model that needs to be raised. The other thing about it is, the ability to drive change in the organization. Whether you're working with the IT organization or the shared service organization, they themselves have to sell their value inside within their organizations. And I think this is part of the challenge that we have to collectively address. And so when we look at where we succeed with clients and where we could do better, that's one of the key differences that we find in how we actually do successfully engage. Where if the business units are part of the process, where they can anticipate and envision the change and therefore adopt it. And so, in IBM, we've perfected a process to be able to do so. And that's how we actually think will actually accelerate the acceptance of new models here. So the new models are not just a commercial issue. It is really about driving the change back into the enterprise.
Yeah, so the commercial model is just one piece of it,
Right.
but then the contracting for the services and what are expected from there, that's the bigger part of that puzzle. I mean, at Aronson, we've been talking to and advising a lot of clients to go through this, what we call the zero-cost transformation, which is able to balance out the financial, commercial side with the change, transformation, innovation side, right? And how we can funnel savings to drive the transformation that the CEO or CIOs want, right? It's still not perfected, but I think it's the thought that goes into it that makes it very, very different than the typical contract, which is focused just on savings and service levels.
That's a good point, though, Tony. At the end of the day, I think most projects actually fail because of bad change management or lack thereof. And so you can bring in new technologies and you can push it top down, but if people aren't on board, they don't understand the change, don't know how to enact and enable them for the change, then it usually fails.
Correct. The other thing that I'll say, we have to admit that there's a lot of fast space that's going on here, right? And we got new entrants came in here. I was watching the list of companies Frank was pointing out that names I've personally never heard of. But as a service provider and as a client, we got to be also to be prepared to experiment here. And this is where we do need to look at a large ecosystem, pick specific points of areas where we can collectively take risk. And there should be a free zone here, right? A client and a supplier need to be able to experiment. If it works, great, scale it. If it doesn't, go on to the next one. I think those are part of the evolutions of what we see happening between our large and our strategic clients as we go forward.
Yeah. So shifting tracks a little bit, as the hybrid work model and the digital workforce become a reality, how are businesses rethinking, where to have the operations or, what kind of talent to hire? So Sam, if you want to go first.
Sure. We were actually just talking about this backstage. It's still a puzzle that I don't think anybody has the full answer for, but what we are leaning towards at least is for our junior workforce, you're trying to bring them back to the office 2 to 3 days a week. Because, we all know, you learn from the hallway conversation, overhearing somebody has a phone call that you're like, oh, that's how it's being managed. And I think we feel like that's really the best way for collaboration. So that is becoming more and more a policy for us that we are trying to enforce. On the other hand, when you're talking about senior leadership, when you're talking about really key resources, we actually have the opposite, which is we are in 155 countries, so we can't do that, but we hire literally, some jobs are remote global. So we literally don't care where you are in the world. as long as we can align on our working hours, skill set, best fit for the job, you're hired. And that's kind of the interesting balance of, at what point you say you want to bring them in versus not. But I think what's most important for us is offices are places for collaboration versus if you want to just take a call, you can do that at home. So we try to make sure the days that they're coming to the office is more about collaboration, it's about innovation, it's about solving problems rather than just sitting in your cube or office and take a call.
Right.
From our perspective, we are embracing all of the models here, right? Because clearly we got clients that want us to be in offices for the types of work that we do for them. Some of them are a little more open about where work can get done. And as a corporation itself, we are driving, a balance of those two. I agree with what Sam just said. For senior leadership, in the offices are helpful, and for the junior workforce, collaboration is a critical part of the balance of being in the office for X number of days. But the other thing that we're starting to see as an evolution of the business right now is what type of work a client will retain and what kind of work they will actually consider a service provider providing for them. It has moved beyond just, of course, the IT development operations and, of course, in some of the classic back office operations of a client. We are starting to see, as Frank talked about, marketing, even sales operations kind of starting to move out here. Product support, product engineering, and product design is also starting to get involved with a customer supplier base. And that's also asking us as a service provider to decide where to put those types of works with clients based on where they are in the maturity of those types of processes themselves. So to us, the whole canvas is open. We've got operations in all of the typical places we expect us to be, and also growing in nearshore and onshore locations to be able to meet clients where they need to be.
Yeah, I mean, Sam and I talked about this, and I agree with everything Sam said as it relates to junior versus senior folks and kind of like what's the best model versus a hybrid or 2-3 days a week. We've taken the approach of hybrid. We have anchor days on Tuesday, Thursdays. Everybody has to be in the office globally. So if you're in India, you're Tuesday, Thursday. If you're in Manila, Tuesday, Thursday. The US, Tuesday, Thursday. For me, it's a little inflexible because I have kids, I take them to school, I pick them up from school, and it's always a negotiation with my wife, who's gonna drop off, pick up. When I'm in the office, it becomes difficult. I've had to use Uber a few times. But I think we're gonna see a shift to more going back into the office long term, because I do think it creates it creates more of it fosters more collaborative environment. And I see that even when I'm in the office, I hear things that I would not hear sitting in my office at home. It just drives more engagement. I think companies want to go back longer term, not full time. I don't think we'll ever be back 5 days a week. I think it's going to be more of a hybrid. It's also going to depend on the company culture, the size, the scope. If you're just 1, 2, 3 states, 1, 2 countries, it's a little easier to foster that back to the office 3-4 days a week that are kind of fixed. But for these global companies like Uber, like IBM, like your company, Sam, end of the day, a lot of these roles sitting in the US, they're global. We have global teams. We have stakeholders across the globe, and I don't know that it's absolutely necessary to be in an office 2, 3, 4 days a week. But I do think it fosters better collaboration. It fosters engagement with your more junior folks, because they've never experienced work before 5 days a week. So it's a very different world we live in today, and I think it'll be a different world we live in 2-3 years from now. I think things will change.
But Anupam, I would say that the question is gone past where to work or hybrid office. So I think the conversations that we're starting to see is where work should get done.
Yeah.
And whether it's in the office or at home is actually the secondary part of the discussion. And I think as organizations look at how work gets done, whether they do it all internally, whether onshore, offshore, or global organizations like Fresenius, I think that's where clients and service providers can actually change the paradigm as we go forward.
Yeah.
And the newer technology that we're talking about will fundamentally disrupt that even more so. So I think what we're talking about is almost yesterday's discussion, but actually the focus will now be how can technology drive work getting done very differently in going forward models.
Yeah. And also opened up the vista in terms of where you find the talent, right? Now you pretty much can find them wherever they are, right? You don't have to concentrate them in 1 or 2 locations. So it's opened up a lot more possibilities.
I think just last piece, it also has a very significant impact on how your offices look. So our offices, the new offices, are very different from the traditional offices, right? A lot more collaboration spaces, no assigned seating, it's all neighborhood. You can come in and just sit in this chair today, that one the other day. So I think it
Yeah.
also changes commercial real estate and the way that offices
Absolutely.
design are.
Yeah, in fact, I like to say that people now like to work at home and mingle at work, right? And in fact, our office here in LA, they've redesigned the entire entrance, where the entrance when you walk in is like a hotel with a lounge and a bar, because you want to get people there to mingle, network, and feel this is a fun place to go. So the whole concept, as you said, of real estate has changed. However, I'm hearing rumblings about the commercial real estate market being under a lot of stress, and the shoe's about to fall, literally, I think, in many downtowns. So unintended
But in
consequences.
this hybrid work, I'm curious to get Sam and Neil's perspective here. The other thing that has actually also now become really paramount is security. Physical security is one thing, but also now your data privacy and personal information as it's now moved around. I think this is where we're starting to see corporations really pay attention to, because it's best been in the news about even IBM, U.S. Army information is out there in the press, right? So how do you prevent something like that when you got a workforce that's so distributed? And so I think those are the types of things that will also be part of the whole narrative here about where work gets done.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get to our last question, which is really around how businesses are becoming more data-driven and digitalized. So how can they make agility more intrinsic to the operating model to help them, navigate through this rapidly shrinking business cycles? Sam, if you want to go first.
Sure. I think I mentioned maybe on my first thought, the way that we do business review is very different. Just, no more PowerPoints. Everybody is ready with what the insight they have, the story they want to tell, but we literally pull up our dashboard in front of our CEO, and she's like, click there, how about that, how about this? So it's very much insight-driven, it's very much conversation. No matter how much you can prepare yourself, there are some questions that you're like, okay, well, hold on, I'll get back to you. So it's very much dynamic. It's very much customizable to the audience. So the questions she's going to ask me is very different than what the board is going to ask or what my peers are going to ask. So I think that's one fundamental shift that I see. The second is just making sure that, because that's the end product, in order for you to deliver that end product, you need to have a lot of infrastructure, a lot of connectivity, a lot of standardization of the data. And as we all know, that's not easy for a global company with a lot of systems and processes. So kind of that brings a lot of focus on how do you really streamline all your infrastructure to be able to do a business review like that on your phone, on your tablet, live. So those are I think, two different things that I would say are a lot more common these days than what it used to be even 5 years ago.
On the glass, right? That's where we all are going to right now. So even within IBM, we're doing the same thing, right? So our CEO and CFO on down can drill down to a business unit through the systems. We're seeing clients also start to adopt that as a data-first approach to be able to provide all operations. And I think this is still at the very nascent start of that. The biggest part of it is not just getting the data, it's actually getting the organization tuned to using it the way Sam just described it. So in IBM, we're on the same journey internally, and we're starting to see some of our clients do the same.
I'm seeing a big focus on process automation, and to your point too, around data. We have Uber specifically, we have data scientists in almost every team. So data is becoming paramount. To be able to drill down, we're using a couple different technologies to get to data quick and answer questions from different viewpoints based on which leadership team you're on or which department you're in. But I'm seeing a big focus and a lot of energy being put into automation. And if you think about ChatGPT and all the AI that's coming out, it's moving so quick. So right now, we're just understanding how we can even use it. We're putting in processes in place to capture, if engineers are using it and it's going into our product, we have to manage that IP. And so now we're putting teams in place to manage this across 35,000 employees over 87 countries. It's not easy, but it's a big focus of ours right now. I think a lot of companies are struggling with the same challenge.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, we're at the end of our time, so I think it's been a great discussion, and I think what's come out is obviously no matter which industry you're in, you're as a digital disruptor, conventional healthcare, 100-plus-year-old company, right? You have to rethink your operating model and understand the rapid shifts in business cycle, leverage data, AI, automation. At the same time, think about your workforce, and of course, find a good service partner that can help you through that shifting cycle. So with that, we can end this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.